That's right. It all comes down to job creation at the end of the day. Mr. Khan, stay on with me because I'm going to ask you also about demonetization, the figure. That's the inevitable question. We'll come to that. But Dr. Omkar Goswami, Lord Meghnad, in that order, how did that happen?
See, there are two very contradictory things, and Amitabh has raised an important point. One way of increasing investments in the sectors, in the private sector, in areas which is highly employment intensive is to give them tax shocks, which may or may not work. The other way is what many of us is talking about is get rid of these corporate exemptions and try and bring the corporate tax rate down, if not to 25%, at least to 27%, so that the corporations get a 3% relief after the exemptions are gotten rid of. The two don't sit together because typically when you want to push private sector investments in certain areas, specific areas, you tend to give tax stops and or tax exemptions, and that is perhaps not the way to go. So I understand Amitabh's sentiments, but the fiscal instruments to make that sentiment a reality are quite limited.
Lord Meghnad?
Well, yeah, I have always thought for a long time that the problem with manufacturing in India is labor market reform. And unless you really let large factories come up in the low-tech sector, you're not going to create jobs. The way to create jobs is go for low-tech industries and relax labor restrictions.
Okay.
Now, no government does it.
What I wanted to say is that, I wish Amitabh had also focused upon the role of small and medium enterprises. I'm not saying micro at all. They are the largest employers in this country. They are not yet integrated with global and regional production chains. They are not globally competitive, and they cry out for the need for government help in accessing finance, export markets, and technology. And skills. And skills. And they depend up to 78% on informal or personal credit. Now, why on earth would this government not give a huge focus on improving their lot, because they are going to be the general. It's also in defense production, by the way.
Rahul,
which is mentioned.
One way to do it is to institutionalize the bank called Mudra, rather than as a scheme. Ensure that the SIDBI is made as a first-hand lending institution.
No, just time out on this. Just one second.
Okay.
I agree with Rajiv's sentiments, but here's the situation. All these banks are burnt every which way by making bad loans to very large corporates.
Not to SMEs.
Now the outcome of that is a very unfortunate outcome where the people who have been very, very good borrowers, which are the small and medium enterprises, are starved of capital.
Now, to do something about it, Omkar.
No, so I'm saying
they never get into the discussion.
Let's ask Amit Malviya. Amit Malviya, our experts, you've heard them. Your response on that point.
Rahul, I can't agree with both
on that point. Amit Malviya, why not help them?
Rahul, I can't agree more with what Amitabh and Rajiv Kumar have said. We really need to build an ecosystem that feeds both the large corporates as well as the small and medium enterprises. But there are a couple of aspects to it. One is the financial instruments, the tax incentives, the incentives of land, power, so on and so forth. But are they just enough to create?
It's been 3 years.
I'm coming to that, Rahul. Rahul, I'm coming to that. The point is that I don't think that is enough ingredient to create the kind of big, fat middle class that we want to create on the back of economy. You also need skills. You need people who can work in these industries, and that unfortunately has been a big challenge. And while we go out and skill our people, get those number of people who can work in these industries and create jobs, it's not something that's going to happen immediately. It is going to take time. The government is working.
You promised the moon. Now I'm sure the next statement is going to be that the UPA must be blamed for it.
We have promised the moon and we are going to deliver the moon. And if you see, and that is the reason why this government has been talking about the non-glamorous things like
if they're going to deliver on what they promised, then there obviously is no room for more promises. That's the main point, isn't it? I'm just bringing Kalikesh Singh Dio. What do you make of this MP of the Lok Sabha from the BJD, the statement coming out from Mr. Malviya there?
I think it's devoid of reality. The fact is on the ground, SMEs and MSMEs are screaming for capital, they're screaming for help. And they are facing a very stiff competition primarily due to lack of access to capital, lack of access to markets, in even maybe better management technicalities. However, we find that the government talks big and is unable to deliver in crucial areas, especially in the manufacturing sector. And I can tell you that I agree with Amitabh Khan that that's going to be the largest employer in the years to come. But we haven't done enough, and consecutive governments haven't done enough. I'm not only going to blame this government.
So what are the 2 or 3 big things, Kalikesh Singhdeo, that you would suggest the finance minister to do in order to put up the manufacturing sector right up there on the priority list and get it going?
Easy access to finance is one. Labor law reforms is
What
second.
does that mean? Hello?
What does that mean? Mudra Bank has been set up. There are so many avenues.
Just some simple. Navika, you have said easy access to finance. 4 words. What does that mean?
Rhetoric.
SMEs, I know it's not rhetoric. I can tell you I have an interest in a small scale manufacturing unit, and we've been trying to get working capital for the last 2 years.
So how can the budget change? How can the budget change the ability of a small, and they should get it, I agree with you. How can the budget change the ability of a small or medium enterprise to access a bank and increase working capital? Give a suggestion. I want to get a suggestion from you.
Rahul.
Yes, sir, if you allow me to
I think Rajiv Kumar has hit the nail on the head.
Let's hear a suggestion.
Let's listen to him.
Yeah, go on.
Sorry.
As the budget prioritizes lending to agriculture sector, it should prioritize lending to SMEs, relax the rules for the banks. Not enough. It doesn't translate into action on the ground. The rules need to be relaxed.
The budget cannot do anything if the action is not happening at the ground level.
To ensure the bank that funding is actually translated to these units and they actually get funded. The fact is that while people talk about it in the government, nothing actually happens on the ground.
A straight answer for that.
Straight answer. Straight answer.
What Omkar has raised. For example, what the government could do is to ask banks not merely to lend to SMEs, but also to become equity partners as they do in Germany. They do that. And develop a credit track record for the MSMEs or the local industries in Germany. Why can't our banks do it, and why should our banks only be buying the SME portfolio from NF?
Or shares are worth 60 rupees at 36 rupees worth at 60 rupees.
Rahul, the small and medium sector is one of the most dynamic sectors of the Indian economy. I know that, we work with them. They absorb advanced technology faster than any other sector in India, period. Just leave them alone, is what I'm saying. The minute you get involved in them,
let me go
mess up them. So a specific thing that the finance minister can do for small and medium is to just leave them out of the service tax net. Do you know the administration of service tax for a small and medium organization is huge.
GST will go for a toss. We are rolling the clock back on the GST.
But the administrative costs are very high of filing service tax returns.
Well, the FM now almost arriving at the Rashtrapati Bhavan to brief the President. Just pictures coming. I just want to make a reference to them. The Finance Minister on his way to meet the Rashtrapati. But I want to bring in 1 second. Amitabh Kant. Yeah, M.R. Venkatesh.
Lord Meghna Desai made a very wonderful point on the labor law reform.
Yes.
Though it is a very large subject. The problem is the moment it is being implemented, the Congress party and the left are going to say are anti-labor.
Even the BJD will do it.
No, everybody
bring them in. Why is there no consensus?
But that's a given, M.R. Venkatesh.
That's the point.
That is what the very important for, my friend.
But they will
make the
if you want to increase employment, you've got to reform.
You have to bite the bullet. You have to bite the bullet.
I agree with this.
Industrial Dispute Act has to be given a go-by.
But that, M.R. Venkatesh, goes without saying the opposition is going to find fault.
Anything, either way.
They will make it political.
They already started.
If there are SOPs for corporates, they'll call it a pro-corporate budget. If there are SOPs for, or if there are labor reforms, they'll call it anti-labor. So, Kalikesh Singhdeo, is the
even if there's
is there a script already pre-written on the reaction to the budget? Or really, are we looking forward to a policy document in the form of the budget to give us the roadmap of which way this government needs to go in the remaining 2 years of its tenure?
Navika, I would say that if the government is too scared to take tough decisions and they want to be mollycoddled by the opposition, then they should not be in government. It is the job of the government to take tough decisions and ensure that they carry through policy reforms. One. Second, we are hoping for a vision document from the budget which actually sees real big reforms in the pipeline for over the next 2 years, which is much required. And much of these reforms are tough decisions, such as labor law reforms. And they have to take these steps. That is why they are in government. To take
In the budget or outside the budget?
But will you stand up then?
Both,
No,
both,
will you stand
both,
up then in
both,
session
both.
after session attacking the government for hitting the interests of the weaker sections, as you will call it, the farmers and the labor? Would you do that?
Look,
would you do that, or would you be constructive? Because that's where the problem is.
It depends upon the reforms. It depends
upon the reforms. See, that's when we don't get a straight answer. We don't get a straight answer.
Let me tell you. Biju Janata Dal always has constructive
among the opposition.
It's not my party's policy to oppose just for the sake of opposition.
I have to put that on record that your party, even though in opposition and must oppose, as opposition does, you have shown a long record of being very balanced and very nuanced.
Very constructive.
Yeah.
But also very welfareist. So this is a state which does believe in expanding the scope of welfareism. So you have a situation where perhaps the national narrative will be different from the actions at the state level. I just want to go back to Amitabh Kant. Demonetization, was it worth it? Was it worth it, sir? Because there are some people who say that the budget should focus actually for a large part on the effects of demonetization. Was it worth it? Amitabh Kant.
I think it's important to understand that India as a country is not a corporate entity. Demonetization may impact you by 1 quarter, it may impact you for 2 quarters, but for a country it must look at a long-term perspective of a 3-decade period. It's important to understand that India is a $2 trillion economy. It has another parallel economy which is very vast. You can't become a $10 trillion economy by not totally dismantling the parallel economy. The parallel economy, the informal economy must merge with the formal economy to make India grow. You can't grow if 95% of your personal consumption expenditure is in cash. You can't grow if 85% of your transactions are in cash. You can't grow if your tax base is so meager, and therefore formalizing and digitizing this economy is critical to enhance your tax base. Otherwise you will never have the resources to invest in education, health, nutrition, which are very critical. To my mind, the key task for this government is really to reap the advantage of this demographic transition, which can only be done through health, education and nutrition. And you need adequate resources for that. You will never have this till you don't totally break apart the informal black economy.
Let's bring in Chengal Reddy on this point because it's been very well put, no doubt about that. But I want to bring in Chengal Reddy, who represents farmer interest. Chengal Reddy and Navika, I want you to take up this actually. Why don't you speak to him about this entire issue, because demonetization is supposed to hit the rural economy the hardest.
That's exactly what the opposition has been talking about, Chengal Reddy, that it is the rural sector that's taken the hit. But as far as the government is concerned, it's put out the numbers as far as Kharif sowing is concerned, whether it's the crop under rice or wheat or pulses, everything seems to be going up. So has the farm sector been hit by demonetization, or is it something of a small problem which was basically very transient, and now we are out of it and we haven't really seen any long-term impact as far as sowing is concerned?
This budget, farmers are expecting the routine expectations of credit and other facilities. But more than the budget expectations, what we expect from Mr. Jaitley is how is he going to solve the problems of demonetization that has caused unimaginable loss to almost 86 to 90% of the small marginal farmers, tenant farmers, migratory labor. If you look at the last 2.5, 3 months, the entire informal economy which was supporting the small marginal farmers in vegetables, fruits, animal husbandry, fisheries, that has all been withdrawn. That is a staggering 4 to 5 lakhs of crores. Now we are all aware that in the last all of 30-40 years, the banking sector has never gone beyond 40% in providing credit to the farmers. As far as small marginal tenant farmers, hardly even 10% are also not getting. Now the informal sector, money also is now stopped. So what is expected of Mr. Jaitley is in this budget, is how is he going to fill up the gap that is now created, number one. The second thing is we have lost very, very heavily, probably it runs into a couple of lakh crores, because if you see the average, every vegetable seller, producer, market, commission agent, we have lost an average 200 to 300 rupees per day. This is a staggering figure which I don't want to go into. Now when it comes to the budget,
so what will make you happy?
Will that make you happy? Chengal Reddy, you seem to suggest that everything has caused you, losses to the tune of about 4 lakh crores. Okay, those visuals on your screen are of Finance Minister Arun Jaitley arriving at Parliament. He's met with the President and reached Parliament. He will now go in for the cabinet meeting where he will brief his cabinet colleagues on what are the provisions of the budget. He is flanked by his two ministers of state, Santosh Gangwar, member of parliament from Bareilly, and Arjun Meghwal from Rajasthan, both of them with him. Not much help he's likely to have got from these two individuals, because in the past he has relied on his deputy Jayant Sinha a lot as far as formulation of budget is concerned, given the fact that he was a merchant banker. But in this particular case, will he get his rural fix right with the deputies that he has? That is something that people are expecting. So Arun Jaitley arriving in Parliament. Dr. Rajiv Kumar, the question is, when we come back and look at the budget, what are the two big priorities that he's going to be looking at? One is job creation for sure, which will, really address the investment issue. What's the second big priority that the government really needs to look at an urgent basis? Is it the farm sector, or is it, consumption expenditure that needs the kickstart from really putting the economy back on track?
Actually, both, Navika, because, you have to have some improvement in the consumption expenditure, which has taken a hit because of demonetization. And as I keep saying, it will come if you expand the band of the income tax, which is where the 20% is applicable. That's one. And the farm, you've really talked about it. There has been a steep decline in public expenditure on the agricultural sector that has to be reversed. The Prime Minister has been very emphatic about it. But more than that, you've got to work on liquid resources, on post-harvest situations, on agro-processing foods and warehousing and logistics, because that's where the jobs would be. And finally, just one, my pet peeve at this time, affordable housing.
Affordable housing. Okay, Rajiv, is that quick 10-second point?
The government narrative on demonetization rests on two assumptions. One is that consumption will rebound, and secondly that a lot of the informal sector will move into the formal sector. I think if the finance minister is able to explain how he reasons these things, how this is going to happen through fiscal and monetary measures, that he'll have done the job.
Okay, that's a very simple expectation coming out of the finance minister. Will the finance minister address the issue of employment creation and revving up consumption expenditure, and explain the linkages between the informal sector turning into the formal sector? Will the finance minister do that? That's the big question we'll continue to follow. Visuals on your screen of Finance Minister Arun Jaitley reaching Parliament. I thank all my panelists at this point. When we come up after this very short break, we'll go straight into the budget. The markets have turned from green to red at this point. How are the markets looking at this entire issue? Is the government going to deliver on reality, or is it going to continue with the rhetoric? That's the big question we'll answer after we come out of this very short break.